Welcome back to True vs. Polt. We're currently on Game 3. The players are tied 1-1. This game's on King Sejong Station. I'll introduce the players. Top left we have the infallible macro Zerg, True. And in the bottom right we have the aggressive versatile Terran, Polt. Both players are from South Korea. This map is very balanced, I would say. One of my favorite maps along with Frost. It's a classic map that was played in Heart of the Swarm, and a map that I think still gets lots of play, and it has an exposed natural mineral line as well as natural ramp, destructible debris, so kind of like a backdoor at your natural. And then it has this sort of bizarro winding path and these weird ice structures, and you can break them down, but people almost never do, and this part of the map almost never gets used. And the architecture, it really is bizarre. Usually the only thing you'll see is proxy pylons up here for Protoss, or drops up here on the 4th. Reaper expand from Polt, standard stuff. Hatchery first from True, with gas, so absolutely nothing going on. So I'll talk about the map a bit more. The third base is somewhat open, although this gaping chasm around the midsection of the map makes it where you can wall in here, and you can wall in here, and really, most people do not wall in here, but most people wall in here, and they can just move their units easily from their natural down to defend. The fourth base, there's this high ground that sometimes gets abused, but this little whatever this is, stalagmites of ice, kind of get in the way of some drops that kind of discourage people to drop up on the high ground. As we see, True preemptively made Zerglings like he's been doing in every game of the series, and probably is going to take no damage from this Reaper. Maybe a Ling, maybe. But he has a Queen out at this point, a second one walking down. Polt at this point is making the Reaper just a scout. True every single game has shown he can't be touched with one Reaper, and he's starting to work on the rocks very quickly. This is a great move. I spoke about this last game on Daeson Station. By the way, if you haven't already, subscribe for more StarCraft content. A playlist of more StarCraft will be in the description. Last game of the series on Daeson Station, we saw True preemptively break down his backdoor rocks with the Zerglings. Now inevitably Polt just kind of used the short rush distance to ram it down his throat and push down the middle. So it didn't really matter, but this game it might. I would say on this map, King Sejong Station, if you're not ready for it, these backdoor plays on the rocks are more common, and we see Polt's trying one of those. Watch this. True doesn't see it. He doesn't have an Overlord right here, why would he? He wants to send one over here to check for this 4th. He's sending one in to scout, and of course he wants to see Polt's 3rd, so this is one thing you should consider with Zergs, is their Overlords are oftentimes, the initial ones at least, are sent out to scouting positions. They're not always going to be able to commit Overlords to just scouting for stuff like this. And True still doesn't know. His creep, he's planted a tumor and he still does not know. So he might even spread this tumor and have it die, which would suck. Polt's bringing a tank evac to start this contain, but I predict that this contain is not going to work well. And there's the tumor. He loses. He saved it. True so Gosu. And he killed the rocks. This attack is going to do such a laughably low amount of damage compared to what Polt wanted it to. He's building one medevac. He's built a mine. He's going to start to drop his tank. But here come the Queens and Lings. And he immediately picks up his tank evac. He wishes he could salvage this right now. He wishes he could make an annulment basically out of that bunker and just salvage it completely. As we see, the hero creep tumor gets dragged down and put on the back door of True. So True showing one of his key characteristics, one of his defining characteristics, his ability to defend harass and position-based harass. As Polt gets a few cutesy tank shots off, the benefit of the tank evac, you're almost always guaranteed to do damage if you can micro it enough. I think that's kind of the reason why Blizzard's considering taking it out. especially in TVT, because this is ridiculous in TVT, and I still cannot figure out really how that functions in TVT other than really well. It's just a mystery. TVT to me is a mystery matchup. It's really the only one that I find perplexing completely. I think it's one of the hardest matchups to learn, and it's the hardest matchup to play with an off race. We see Polt buries a Widow Mine here, and it gets pretty much wasted on an Overlord, but Polt will probably pick this off. It has 5 HP. Polt can pick up at any time. He picks off the Queen, which is smart because Queens recently have had their range on their air attack increased by a little bit. It's now 9. Now that's air attack exclusive, not ground attack. And oh my god, True's doing a queen drop. He's dropping queens and Polt's man, and Polt's being really aggressive and doesn't have anything. Now he's going to ferry Lings over. Polt's bringing his Polt Viking in. Polt doesn't have any Marines in that bunker. Ooh, hot pickup on the queen. True, this is amazing. As the Viking picks off one of the Overlords, the True's dropping one Overlord down, a Transfuzzle going down, the Viking being picked off, the Dropper Lord absurdly low, the Polt door, oh my goodness, the front door is breached, it's completely caved in, and Polt is really regretting letting these guys in like they're the Iron Men in Winterfell, and this is really bad. I mean, it's bad. Bad news bears for Polt. He went 3cc. He went for this aggressive, obnoxious tank evac, bunker pressure, and True did some crazy shit. He broke my brain. He abused the close positions by air of the naturals, and not only that, but how exposed by air this natural is. And he did a queen drop, and like, if you think TLO is creative, honestly, that blows anything I've seen TLO do recently out of the water. And then he ferried more Lings over and used Transfuse to save units as he sniped the Polt Viking, the signature Polt Viking, the one unit which would be very useful against the push. That's a great example of why it's dangerous to just endlessly ferry your units across the map and be hyper aggressive, is it does leave you a bit vulnerable at home, especially if someone like True wants to get creative. We've seen the Dropper Lord get used oftentimes to just circumvent, you know, oh, I'm going to drop into the high ground and be obnoxious. And it's very strong. And it catches Terrans off guard because for 5 years they haven't been playing against it and they're not used to it. We see a Spire on the way for True, a 4th base on the way too. Double upgrades, no Baneling speed still. And Combat Shield's about to finish. Polt pretty much going pure bio. He's trying to go bio mine and take a 3rd. So oftentimes we see Terrans, they play hyper aggressive against Zerg. They always want to be in Zerg's face, which is fine, but with the addition of the Dropper Lord, especially so early on, it limits Terran's ability to play like that, especially if Zerg is smart enough to use the Dropper Lord to circumvent the wall, because oftentimes whenever Terrans play hyper aggressive like this, players like DeMuslim will play like this. They'll commit all their units to attacking, they'll be very annoying. It's an aggressive, fun way to play, but the risk of it is if your opponent can circumvent your wall, which is oftentimes the only thing preventing you from being attacked and having your natural decimated. So, obviously that's a big risk. We see a Bane drop in the natural with some Ling follow-up, and some Lings clearing out a couple SCVs at the 3rd. Polt doing something very intelligent, which is basically laying minefields for Ling run-bys. So 11 SCVs died total. If you pull up the SCVs killed count, it's 40. 44, True. That is absurd and probably game-ending. If we go to income, it's a complete joke. The Terrans being over doubled in minerals with mules on 3cc. That's very, very bad for Polt. True has done a great creative job of killing workers this game. That queen drop really blew me away. I mean, that was crazy. We see lots of full energy queens for True spring forward here. These units are very good defensively. They're good against medevacs. That's a lot of DPS they just absorbed, even though 2 of them died. Lingbane coming forward here. Polt tries to pick up. The problem, however, is Polt's pretty much all in. He has to do damage. He can pump pure marine, but that's about it. He's getting his 2-2. He's at an upgrade disadvantage. He's at a severe worker disadvantage. The problem is Polt has to make things happen because he's very behind. And he made something happen there. He sniped a few Muta. And 2-2 still not complete, so Polt's going to lose this fight potentially before the 2-2 finishes. Or at least lose quite a few Marines, and Polt just GG's. So he lost the big picture fight. That was the end of that game, so if you enjoyed, subscribe for more so you don't miss the rest of the series and more StarCraft 2 videos. And Rangers about and a couple videos about sports if you care about that.